Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. PlayStation just finally gave us a first proper showcase after what felt like months of silence, and people are absolutely losing their minds over it. So let's all take a deep breath, compose ourselves, and take a critical look at the PlayStation Showcase 2021. This conference didn't start particularly well. Actually, the middle wasn't very good either. They sort of took all of their big announcements and stuck them in on the last 10 minutes of the show. So it's probably going to sound like I hated this conference for a lot of the video, and I didn't. I think that it was a decent to good show, but the first two-thirds of it are pretty weak, especially comparatively. So bear with me, but it started with this really long, bad ad for PlayStation, which I realize that the entire showcase is basically an ad for PlayStation, but it just felt especially weird to start with this like prolonged, I mean, it felt like probably 5 minutes of people just playing chess in this PlayStation centric city and like moving around. Like it didn't actually in any way advertise why PlayStation was good to me. It was just kind of this weird overproduced thing that I don't know. I don't understand what purpose it served. It was just kind of a waste of time. But after that, Jim Ryan came out and he was like, PlayStation's great, PlayStation's cool, PlayStation, PlayStation, PlayStation. And I was like, okay, but show don't tell. And so then they did. And they finally showed their first game. It felt like it was 10 minutes in. It probably wasn't. But they finally showed off the Knights of the Old Republic remake teaser. It was very minimal. It was just a CGI thing of Revan standing in the darkness, and then he like moves his lightsaber up to his mask so you can see that it's Revan. And at first, I was really excited for this. I was like, heck yeah, Knights of the Old Republic, that's like one of my favorite games of all time. You know, it's one of the formative games of my childhood. It's the reason why I love RPGs as much as I do. Such a good game. But then I found out after the fact that this KOTOR remake is going to be a 1 year timed exclusive for PlayStation. And immediately that put a bad taste in my mouth because I know that it's going to be that thing where, you know, when PlayStation gets a timed exclusive, nobody has a problem with it. Everyone's like, it's such a good business decision. Wow, what a huge gift for them. But then, like, if Xbox does the same thing, then it's this thing where it's like, how dare you do that? Like, that's so scummy. You took this game away from the PlayStation audience. And it's every single time it happens. And it's so irritating. And so I probably won't play this game on my PlayStation just, like, because it's going to feel bad to me. So I'll either wait a year and play it on my Xbox or more likely just play it on my PC where I played the first version anyway. So probably just going to do that. But yeah, so that's kind of a really exciting announcement that's just ruined by the sort of circumstances of it. But afterwards, they showed off just an incredibly generic looking game called Project Eve. I assume that's a working title, but it just looks like kind of waifus in space. Like it looks like a very generic, forgettable anime game that, I don't know, a handful of people are probably going to be really into it, but the majority of us are just going to kind of forget that it exists and move on with more exciting things. And speaking of moving on from things, the third game is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. And me personally, I have absolutely no interest in this game. Tiny Tina to me was always one of the worst parts of the Borderlands games, and so to do a spin-off with her as like the narrator or like one of the main characters, it's just like such a cringe factory. And this trailer feels like it too, where like every time she talks it's like, oh god. Like she like I hate that character so much. Like she's so bad. And then to make it also like D&D centric, which I know they did in that DLC forever ago, but it just like it feels more like they're making fun of D&D than that they actually really love it and want to play it. And as somebody who plays D&D like basically every weekend, that just feels kind of shitty. So like I think one of the first trailers, Tiny Tina's like, roll for initiative, bitches, and it's like that is just not the vibe that I want from a D&D. Like it's just not good. It's bad. Just hard pass on Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Like no. And speaking of things that are probably going to be a hard pass on me. Forspoken was next, and at first this was another game that I was kind of interested in. You know, when they showed it off, what, like a year ago or something, and it was just called Project Athia. She was running around and just doing like cool flips in combat and stuff. But now in this trailer, we find out that this game is sort of an isekai. So somebody gets pulled from our world into a video game fantasy world, right? And of course, the person who gets pulled in is this like very atypical like millennial scene girl, and every time that she talks in this trailer, it's just like kind of cringy. Like it's the kind of things that people say when they think that they're being cool, but it's just not cool. And it's like, oh man, like it feels like it feels like 40 or 50-year-olds wrote a character who's supposed to feel like a 20-year-old, and it's just not. It just doesn't. They just don't connect. It just doesn't feel good. So I don't know. Maybe I'll wait for the reviews on that, but I think I'm probably going to end up passing on that. And afterwards, we got Rainbow Six Extraction. I'm not really a huge multiplayer person just in general. Like I'll probably play Halo, and I've played Fortnite and like Among Us and things like that. But those are kind of more the exception than the majority. Like I'm just not a huge multiplayer person. So I talked to a friend of mine who's very much into multiplayer games to see if he was interested in Rainbow Six Extraction, and he said absolutely not. Like just like I don't know exactly what it is about this game, but it just, again, a lot like Project Eve. It just feels really generic and forgettable. Like I think it's going to be one of those games that people play for a week and then they move on or move back to something that they're actually really interested in. Then our our sixth game. So we're moving pretty fast at this point, but our sixth game was an Alan Wake remaster. And now I love Alan Wake. Like it's a absolutely fantastic game, and it's a great get that this game is now going to be playable on PlayStation consoles. It was always one of the things from the 360 era that PlayStation fans really missed out on, I feel like, because it was genuinely a fantastic game. So I'm glad to see it going over to PlayStation. I don't know if it's like super exciting. Like I would have preferred for this to be a remake instead of a remaster, because it doesn't look that much better. Like the lighting looks better, and this is definitely a game that very heavily relies on lighting, so that's cool. But just like the character models and textures and stuff are just not, I don't know, they still feel very old to me, which is fine. It's still going to be one of the best games of the 360 generation. I just, I don't know if it was necessarily the most exciting announcement. And then probably the worst announcement in the conference, game number 7, was GTA 5, the PS5 version. We just took it and we're bumping it up to the PS5, and it doesn't look like any better. Now I'm not the kind of person who looks at things and really nitpicks between the two and is like, oh, this one has a slightly higher pixel counter, this one's at a slightly better frame rate. Like that's just not who I am when it comes to gaming, pretty much at all. So again, I went and I asked a friend, and he went and he watched the new trailer, and he's very much a pixel counter, and he looked at it and he was like, I don't know why they bothered with this. So I don't know who this is for. I understand that Grand Theft Auto 5 makes like $1 million a year or a week maybe. Like it makes so much money consistently, so I understand why like it's still going, but I just want 6 at this point. I'm done with 5. I've been done with 5 for like 10 years. Afterwards, we got Ghostwire Tokyo. And I am very interested in Ghostwire Tokyo. I think it looks like a very interesting game. I think it looks very different from a lot of other games. But it still has that problem where every time it shows the actual gameplay of it, and you see the guy doing like this in first person to like throw spells, I'm just like, oh, that's a choice. I don't know if that looks good. Like I'm definitely gonna play it, but I'm just kind of tentative about it. Like I don't know if this is gonna feel good to me. You know what I mean? We'll see, I guess. Also, the main character, I don't know if we've seen him before. This is the first time that I remember actually getting a good look at him, and he looks very generic, like very cookie cutter anime protagonist. So that's kind of a bummer. But moving on, we went to the Guardians of the Galaxy game. And I'm going to be honest, I think this game kind of looks like garbage. Like, it doesn't look good. Like, all the character models and the textures are just not up to par. The comedy in it is, like, I was watching this in a room with, I think, 3 other people, and not a single laugh. And they were really trying. Like, every single time that somebody talked in this trailer, it was supposed to be a joke, and not a single one of them hit. Like, not even a, like, nothing. Just silence. So, not interested in Guardians. Sorry. Then we got Blood Hunt, the Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt game. And this trailer actually got me more interested in the game, which is exciting because I think this is the first time that a trailer in this conference had made me more excited for a game, because before I had no interest in this whatsoever, like at all. But we finally saw gameplay for it, and it looks like the Assassin's Creed multiplayer from, like, Brotherhood, and that was really cool. So I will very happily play some more of that, but with vampires. I don't know if it's necessarily, like, the most exciting game in the world, but I'm definitely gonna give it a shot now, especially if it's, like, free to play or just cheap or on Game Pass or something. Like, I'll absolutely jump in on that. And then the second Bethesda game of the show, we got Deathloop. And boy, I didn't need to see any more Deathloop. Like, I know Dishonored is sort of a cult classic and a lot of people really love it, but it just never did anything for me. And so this game looking like that, but somehow also just worse in terms of just, like, generic character design, is just, like, I don't know. I've never really had a particularly large interest in this. And this, you know, seeing it at every single conference for what feels like 2 years now is just not helping whatsoever. So then we got A Kid Amnesia. We saw almost nothing of this. It was just like a hallway with some drawings. I'm not even really, I mean, presumably it's a game. I don't really know what this is. My assumption is it's a game, like, in the Amnesia franchise, but who's to say? So moving right along, the next game we saw was Chia, or Tachia, maybe? And this one looked really cute. It's these 2 girls sort of, like, hanging out and exploring an island. I think this is going to be one of those sort of indie darlings that people play and are, like, really into. You know, I don't think it's going to be probably nominated for any Game of the Year or anything like that. Not that it needs to be. But it looked really cute. This was one of the few games in the first 30 minutes of this conference where one of the people that I was watching with was actually like, oh yeah, I'll play that. So, way to go, Chia. After that, we got Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy remastered for PS5 and PC. And, you know, again, like with Alan Wake, I'm excited that this is moving over to new platforms, that is going to PC so more people can play it. But this game, I feel like neither of these games came out that long ago. Like, I can't imagine that they don't hold up. So I'm not really sure why we need a remaster to get onto PS5. Like, most of the things that you're going to add to the remaster are going to be things that you're going to get anyway. Like, you're going to get better frame rate and load times. So I guess they're just doing, like, another lighting pass, or, like, maybe touching up the textures a little bit. I don't know. It seems kind of unnecessary, but I'm glad that it's going to PC. That's really exciting for people who play there. And then we got Herman Holst coming out, and he basically is the step-off point between, like, really generic, kind of bad E3 conference to, like, this last 10 minutes is gonna be killer, right? So he comes out and he's like, PlayStation makes good games, and we're gonna show you some really exciting games. And at the time, you know, we're 30 minutes into a 40-minute conference, and I'm going like, Harmon, the conference is almost over. You should have already shown us why we should be excited for PlayStation. But, I mean, he was right. All the games from this point on were the exciting ones. So, immediately after he goes off stage, we get, or he wasn't on stage, he was on like a Zoom call, but you know what I mean. We see a guy sitting at a bar, and it's like immediately clear that it's Wolverine. And so me and my friends watching, we're like, that's Wolverine. This is going to be great. And then it's the Insomniac logo, and we're like, Insomniac is doing a Wolverine game? And sure enough, Insomniac is just continuing to hard carry the PS5. Like, Ratchet and Clank, Miles Morales, now Wolverine, like, they are the PS5 games that people are going to be talking about. And it seems like that is not going to be changing kind of anytime soon. So I don't know. It's really exciting that we're getting a Wolverine game. Wolverine is not one of my favorite characters. Actually, I really don't care about him at all. But a couple of my friends are really into him. Like, my friend Ray immediately was like, I gotta buy a PlayStation. And she's not like a huge gamer. So mission accomplished, Insomniac. You definitely got a new fan there. And she's definitely not the only one. But really my only concern with it is that I don't know that Wolverine feels like an Insomniac character. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Insomniac games focuses on more like happy-go-lucky, sort of quippy main characters, you know, like Spider-Man, like Ratchet. And so I don't know that Wolverine fits into that mold, and I'm afraid that they will either change him to make him more quippy or like give him some shitty sidekick. And I don't want either of those things. So I really hope that they just make like a kind of more gritty Marvel game. And my biggest hope is that Insomniac, like, this is just a one-off, and Insomniac just keeps doing like other heroes, and then eventually we can get like an ensemble game, like a Insomniac's Avengers. And I realize that because it takes so long to make games that it would be like 15 years from now before you could have, you know, that team come together. But just that would be super cool. Like, I'm really hoping that that's the direction we're going here. So pretty excited for that Wolverine game. But then they sort of took it off the burner for a minute and kind of dumped us into the cold water, and we spent like 4 minutes watching a Gran Turismo trailer, and it's like, you really had me going. And I understand why we had to see Gran Turismo. Like, I think it's their next major game coming out. But like, I mean, if you go Wolverine and then Gran Turismo, then it's like just a drop off in terms of excitement. But they brought it right back with Spider-Man 2, another Insomniac game. Insomniac needs to slow down. Are they okay? Just again, Insomniac seems like the reason to have a PlayStation 5 at this point. We get a narration where a person's like, I was looking for a challenge and I was hoping you two would be it, or whatever, and it sounds a lot like it's Kraven the Hunter, which is interesting. I enjoy Kraven the Hunter. I don't know that most people do, or maybe even know who he is. So hopefully they can make him, you know, more appealing to a broader audience, because I don't think his normal character would be, assuming that is Kraven. But it doesn't really matter, because whether or not Kraven sucks, it's a Venom game. Like, they end with a stinger of Venom coming out of the shadows. So, like, mission accomplished. Like, Insomniac has made 2 really good Spider-Man games. I mean, you know, Miles Morales, not quite as good as the first one, but like 2 really good Spider-Man games. I trust them to do a 3rd one. So it's going to be great. A little bit of a bummer that it's not coming out until 2023. I understand that games take a really long time to make, and they just put out 2. But at the same time, it's like, maybe we didn't need to hear about it then, because like, I'm just gonna be excited for this for like 2 years waiting for it, and then if it gets delayed, then I don't know. It feels like it was maybe a little bit too early, but it's fine. The thing that really concerns me about it being so far out is that we got a date for this one, or a year at least, it being 2023, but we didn't get that for Wolverine. Which makes me think that this is going to come first, and then we'll get Wolverine after, and that Wolverine will end up being like 2025 or 2026 before that comes out. And, you know, I know they just put out 2 games really close to each other, that being, you know, Ratchet and Miles Morales. But, you know, if we take the assumption that there's 2 teams at Insomniac, and it's the Ratchet team and the Spider-Man team, and we're like assuming that probably the Spider-Man team is working on Spider-Man 2. Does that mean we're putting the Ratchet team on Wolverine? Because I don't know that that's a good fit to go from like happy-go-lucky smiley platformer to like Wolverine cutting people in half with his claws and teeth. Like, I don't know. I have a lot of concerns for the Wolverine game, but I'm sure that it'll end up being really good when it comes out. So, whatever. And then they end on, I think, what we all kind of assumed was going to be here, which was gameplay for God of War Ragnarok. And now, if you've been on the channel for a while, you know that I really didn't like the first game whatsoever. And this game is so far shaping up to be more of the same, which for 99% of the people on the planet is perfect, and it's going to be a 10 out of 10 game and probably game of the year. But for me, is like just woefully uninteresting. Like, you know, it looks like the things that I saw in this trailer was just like, we took Atreus and we turned him from a terrible shitty kid into a terrible shitty teenager. Like, cool. And his voice acting sounds way worse, and I don't know if I'm just more willing to accept bad voice acting from a child than I am from a teenager, but just voice acting really bad. And then the trailer had like massive spoilers in it. Like, I mean, I'm not going to bother, you know, spoiler warning this video because it's all in the first trailer for the game. But like, the fact that they're like, within one trailer, they're like, I wonder if Tyr is alive. And then like at the end, they just show him. Is like, oh, like that was probably one of the bigger twists of the game, and he's just here now. Okay, well, thanks. Or like the fact that they showed off this mysterious new character, this girl, and then immediately after the showcase, they're like, on Twitter, they're like, oh, that's Angerboda, and it's like, okay, well, that character is only known for doing like one thing, so I already know exactly what this character's role in this game is going to be, and like what she's probably going to do throughout it. So cool, thanks for that. But it does look like they're adding a bunch of new enemy types. Like, we see some like centaur thing and like some frog monsters. Like, so hopefully that issue that I had where there was just not enough new enemy types in the first game, hopefully that'll be sort of fixed a little bit. It's reassuring that we saw so many just in this one trailer. I'm assuming that there will be more that we haven't seen. And then I don't know, it concerns me that, again, after the showcase, there were, on my Twitter feed, there were so many like big name YouTubers and media types announcing that they were in the game, right? So like, we all know that Alana Pierce has moved from being sort of a journalist to being a writer for Sony Santa Monica. But now it looks like also Prosy D Sungwon he's now voicing Ratatoskr, the squirrel. So he's in the game, and like Young Ye is voicing some deer or something. So they're both in the game, and for at least two of those, I'm really excited for them. Right? Like, I don't want to take away the accomplishment of it. Of like, Alana Pierce has wanted to be a writer for video games for a very long time, and now she's working at one of the most popular studios on the planet. So I'm really excited for her, and I don't want to take that away. And Sungwon is a really great voice actor, super underrated. But I also can't ignore the fact that like, these are three people that have millions of subscribers or followers or simps. And so hiring these people in any capacity in the game is just free advertising. And there's a part of me that feels kind of scummy about that. Like, it just doesn't feel great. So hopefully that doesn't end up being a trend. Like, if we see a lot of other YouTubers or media personality types announcing that they're in first-party PlayStation games, then maybe that's something we should be concerned about. For right now, I don't think it is yet. But that's just a slippery slope that leads to Logan Paul being the next infamous protagonist or something. So let's just avoid that if at all cost. You know what I mean? Like, that is not what I want whatsoever, and I don't think it's what any of the people who actually really like these games do either. So to sort of wrap up my thoughts on this showcase, there were some really huge announcements in it. You know, seeing Spider-Man 2, getting gameplay for God of War, the announcement that Insomniac is working on a Wolverine game. Like, these are all absolutely massive announcements that people are going to be talking about for years. Like, these are the big games coming to PlayStation over the next little while. But I just don't think the showcase was particularly great. And that really comes down a lot to that first 30 minutes, because all of the good stuff was in that last 10. So the pacing was just really, really bad. There was nothing particularly exciting in that first 30 minutes, like I said. And then even within that, they broke it up with, like, I think we saw the sacred symbols, like 10 times throughout it, and it was just like 30-second clips of them like folding in and out of the ground, and it just feels really like masturbatory in a way that we didn't need, and it just slowed everything down even more. A lot of the announcements in it felt either bad or unnecessary. Seeing KOTOR was cool, but finding out that it was a timed exclusive is a bummer. Wonderlands and Forspoken are super cringe factories. Seeing GTA 5 was completely unnecessary. Like, that game came out 12 years ago. I don't need to see anything else from it. And a lot of those announcements, even the big ones, if we already kind of knew that they were coming, you know what I mean? Like, Spider-Man 2, I feel like everyone probably would have guessed that that was on its way. And we even already knew that the villain was going to be Venom because of how the previous games end, right? Like, that is what was very clearly being set up. And, even God of War, we got the teaser for that a year ago now, and we were supposed to be playing that game by now, by all accounts. So, like, other than Wolverine, there really wasn't anything particularly surprising in this conference. But those are just my thoughts on it, and I would love to hear what you thought about the PlayStation Showcase 2021 down in the comments below. And if you like this kind of content, please do actually hit like on the video, share it with a friend, or better yet, subscribe to the channel, because it really helps me out. And until next time, I'll see you around.